Yeah, so this year they've brought in economic indicators. O levels में हम इस टॉपिक इस यूनिट को कहते थे economic indicators, जिसके अंदर हम बात करते थे that if you want to know the health of an economy, three major indicators and three major macroeconomic objectives, which were जी आपको सस्टेनेबल इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ चाहिए, आपको स्टेबल प्राइसेस चाहिए, लो एंड स्टेबल प्राइसेस प्रेफरेबली, जिसको आप प्राइस स्टेबिलिटी कहते हैं, एंड देन यू वांट फुल एम्प्लॉयमेंट और यू वांट लो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. ये तीन मेजर मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं. Aggregate demand and aggregate supply analysis basically is one of the workings through which we can prove under different components of aggregate demand, जो पिछली हमने last class 1 or class 2 में deal किया था, and we came up with a final understanding कि देखें जी GDP CIGX minus M, जो भी मुल्क में गुड्स प्रोड्यूस होते हैं वो कौन खरीदते हैं. तो वी सेड कंज्यूमर्स खरीदते हैं, बिजनेसेस खरीदते हैं, गवर्नमेंट खरीदती है, foreigners खरीदते हैं, but minus import because that's not Pakistani goods, so we have to take it out of this whole equation. But if you notice, it says AD over here. मैंने लास्ट क्लास के अंदर इसको AE कहा था, aggregate expenditure. Well, aggregate expenditure is the same thing as aggregate demand, assuming that whatever people are demanding, they're going to be spending on it. So honestly, they're pretty much the same thing. The only difference that comes is, which you will see in A2 mainly, is जब आप इसका ग्राफ बना रहे होते हो तो एग्रीगेट डिमांड का जो कर्व बनता है उसमें आप क्या करते हैं, price level you take on the y-axis and real output you take on the x-axis. This ये y के लिए if you remember इसको तो हम income कहा करते थे. y तो यूज होता है इकोनॉमिक्स में incomes के लिए, but this is actually we're saying it's the real income, it's the purchasing power, it's what my 50,000 rupees income can buy me, right? So we are talking in terms of that. तो फिर उस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जब हम ग्राफ बनाएंगे तो ग्राफ P और Y के साथ इस तरह से बनेगा एंड विल नोटिस कि आपका एग्रीगेट डिमांड कुछ इस तरह से होगा. I'll make some changes to it also because sometimes it's a straight line like this and sometimes it's a curvy line like this. ठीक हो गया? So this is how you're going to deal with it. Okay? But we're going to talk about this a little more in detail in just a bit. Here, what you have is the definition of aggregate demand. ये क्या होती है definition of aggregate demand? It's the total value of goods and services produced in a country in a given period of time, which in another words is the GDP. कितना output produce हुआ है. Components, CIGX minus M. What do you need to know? Determinants of aggregate demand. Detailed knowledge of the components of AD is not required, but I would like you to know a significant sum of it. Meaning, I don't know why they even bothered to say that, but be prepared. क्योंकि जब ऐसे आता है तो ऐसे के अंदर एटलीस्ट आपको एक कंपोनेंट का फैक्टर जरूर बताना है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, if the question is something to do with ये बताएं कि aggregate demand बढ़ कैसे सकता है. ठीक है, they're asking you how can AD increase? Okay, that's the question. How can AD increase? Well, it's very simple. If CIGX goes up, however M falls down, numerically aggregate demand is going to go up because of all of these things. Household की consumption बढ़ जाए, businesses की investments बढ़ जाए, government की spending बढ़ जाए, foreigners start buying more of your product, or you buy less of the foreign product. AD is going to go up. Fair enough. but I would like you to tell me what can cause this C to go up or this I to go up, and so on and so forth. We're going to take a look at those also. At least दो of each तुमको पता होने चाहिए. Uh, some very easy ones is your monetary and fiscal policy. I'm hoping that you remember it. I think I can't emphasize more on that. Then we're going to go into the shape of aggregate demand curve. Downward sloping, ये भी downward sloping है. और अगर ऐसा बनाते हो तो ये भी downward sloping है. So we'll deal with that in just a bit. Then we're going to come towards aggregate supply and so on. जो major important बात है, जो 21 के क्वेश्चन आया है, एक 21 का 8 मार्क का क्वेश्चन आया. You can look at it. Probably it was, I think it was our variant, variant 22. उसमें क्वेश्चन आया कि aggregate supply क्या होता है? Explain what is aggregate supply and what can cause a shift in aggregate supply in the short run and in the long run. I can't emphasize more on this, but remember, short run, long run, बहुत important discussion हो गया है अब, from the CI's point of view. You should have a very good understanding of it. You would notice over here at SRAS में लिखा है upward sloping line or sweeping curve. This is what they mean by sweeping curve. This is the sweeping curve. है तो ये भी upward sloping line है, दोनों upward sloping line, लेकिन एक के अंदर थोड़ा सा sweeping सा effect है. We'll talk about that, but most of you who've already done with me, we've always said ये Keynesian का view है और जो पहला वाला है ये monetarist या new classicals का view है. But yeah, but the end is this. This is your end. Okay, eventually ADAS के curves की shifting से achievement क्या है, होगा क्या? Okay, so let me move on. Let me move on to, all right, I'll take a moment to talk about. Now we said aggregate demand में C जो है, what can affect C? I would say consumption, household की consumption. What can make household consumption increase? I would say कि जो monetary fiscal policy है, those are fine. I have no issues with that. आप जरूर talk करें उसके बारे में. Interest rate, taxation, ये दोनों government की intervention है which can have an effect on people's consumption, right? If the central bank increases the interest rate, हमें पता है, as a result, the borrowing is gonna go down, and as a result, aggregate demand is gonna fall down because consumption is gonna go down. People will borrow less and spend less. Taxes के अंदर, if taxes increases, people will have lesser disposable incomes, and so they're going to consume less, and say, therefore it is going to fall down. But you can even talk about if incomes generally are going down because economy is in a recession or something, right? Or people expect that future prices are going to fall down. So what's going to happen? People are going to buy less stuff, right? So इस तरह से तुमने इसको लेके चलना है. एनी हाउ, उसी तरह इन्वेस्टमेंट के कुछ रीजंस हैं, इंपॉर्टेंट रीजंस हैं. फोकस्ड ऑन अगेन इंटरेस्ट रेट से बिजनेस की इन्वेस्टमेंट, टेक्नोलॉजी में चेंजेस कैन हैव एन इफेक्ट. Cost of capital goods, is it cheaper or more expensive? You can take a look at that. I want to focus on this today for a moment. Government spending is part of CIG. In fact, पूरी equation में it's a direct impact. Taxation, interest rate, government can influence consumption or investment and have an effect on AD. Government spending तो AD का direct impact करता है. तो government spending के अंदर government budget को बड़ा important देना है तुमने अब से. वैसे तो it's a part of fiscal policy, and later on when we're going to be dealing with this stuff, it's going to come back. बट एडी को जब आप डिस्कस करते हो तो आई डोंट थिंक इट्स अ गुड आइडिया टू टॉक अबाउट जस्ट गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग. यू गॉट टू कंपेयर इट. बजट क्या होता है? कितना टैक्स आ रहा है और उस पे कितने खर्चा कर रहे हो. ओके. टैक्स रेवेन्यूज. टैक्स रेवेन्यूज इज वन ऑफ द मेजर एस्पेक्ट ऑफ गवर्नमेंट रेवेन्यू, राइट? सो इसलिए हम टैक्सेस को ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस देते हैं. तो टैक्सेशन अगर कम है, गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग ज्यादा है. जस्ट थिंक अबाउट इट. अभी हमने सर्कुलर फ्लो में भी पढ़ा, टैक्सेशन विड्रॉल है सिस्टम में से और गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग इंजेक्शन है. There's more money coming into the system than going out. What would that do? That is going to cause the aggregate demand to go up. All right, because there's more spending. Then, क्योंकि देखो टैक्सेशन इवेंचुअली क्या करेगा? टैक्सेशन सी को ड्रॉप करेगा, आई को ड्रॉप करेगा. लेकिन अगर वही पैसा फिर जी के तौर पे वापस इक्वेशन में आ जाता है and G की value is bigger than what tax से निकला है, so obviously it's going to have a much bigger impact on aggregate demand. That's fine. इसको कहते क्या है? यहाँ पे बच्चे जो है ना बड़ी मेजर गलती करते हैं. If taxation is less and government spending more, what would I say to the budget's position? So we say it's a budget deficit. Budget में more money is going out than coming in. And when you have a deficit, you obviously have to borrow money. So, because you're spending more than the money that's coming in. So you got to borrow. So deficit leads to borrowing. इसके दूसरे एंड के ऊपर, you should have an understanding if taxation is greater than government spending, so aggregate demand is going to go down because the withdrawal is greater than the injections into the system. And this is called a budget surplus. Now, this is definitely, if you're writing about this and you're impacting your aggregate demand, you're going to sound very smart to the examiner. And that is what the intention is, that, you don't want to miss out any information. You want to give maximum to them. And then you have X minus M and किस तरीके से if foreigner wants to buy more of your stuff. They could be majorly with once you're done with this course, you'll have a very nice clarity in this. But हमारा एक्सपोर्ट दो चीजों पे बहुत रिलाई करता है. वन इज हमारी इन्फ्लेशन, हमारी प्राइसेस कंपेयर टू द फॉरेनर्स, द अदर ट्रेडिंग competing countries. So if our inflation rate is on the higher side, people will prefer our trading partners if their inflation rate relatively is lesser. That's why this word I've highlighted, relative का term बड़ा ही जरूरी है इधर. Because one could be the case कि Pakistan inflation is high, but still Pakistan is selling a lot of stuff. ये कैसे हो सकता है? That means the competing countries are even in a worse situation, right? So that's why there's more of our exports. और दूसरे एंड के ऊपर, if our exchange rate is so weak that foreigner finds our product to be cheap, they would be interested in buying. I think these are very important, legit factors. इसका तुमको AD पे और aggregate supply, later on we're going to deal with that also, और aggregate supply पे भी impact आना चाहिए. 2022 का क्वेश्चन आया था एंड एग्जामिनर के साथ भी वो मार्किंग उसमें केस स्टडी के अंदर आ चुका है ये वाला सवाल, और डिस्कस का था जिसमें उन्होंने पूछा कि इफ देयर इज राइजिंग इन्फ्लेशन एंड weakening currency, how is it going to have an impact on your ADAS and eventually your macroeconomic objectives? So you should know that stuff, right? Moving on very quickly. AD curve कैसा दिखता है? एडी कर्व ऐसे है. क्या बता रहे हैं जी? प्राइस लेवल, एवरेज प्राइस लेवल भी है, जनरल प्राइस लेवल भी है. सिर्फ पी करके प्राइस लेवल भी कर दो तो कोई मसला नहीं. आई डोंट नो व्हाई आई हैव रिटन जीडीपी ओवर देयर. आई मेंट टू राइट जनरल प्राइस लेवल. Y axis, you have real output. Technically it is sort of like quantity, और एग्रीगेट डिमांड कर्व देखो मैंने इस तरह से कर्व के साथ बनाया है। यू हैव सम नंबर्स ऑन द लेफ्ट हैंड साइड। मेरे जो ये नंबर्स आ रहे थे ये कैसे हैं? अगर प्राइस लेवल 100 पे है, अगर प्राइस लेवल 200, 300, 400, 500, I'll do the same on this axis। तो जो प्लॉट किया हुआ है वो एक्चुअली इन नंबर्स के साथ मैच ही करेगा। फॉर एग्जांपल, if you notice, it says if the price level is at 200, CIGX minus M brings you to 300। So if you notice here कि 200 के ऊपर मेरा एग्रीगेट डिमांड की जो वैल्यू आ रही है वो 300 है। C की वैल्यू मिसिंग है इधर। इफ यू कैन फिगर आउट द नंबर ऑफ C, I don't know how much it would be। Probably it might be, किस तरह से निकालेंगे? So you're gonna do C plus 70 plus 80 plus 35 minus 10 should equals to 300। So technically, if you're adding, I think 175, I believe. So 300 minus 175 gives you 125, I think। तो C की वैल्यू आ गई 125। ओके जी। फिर उसके बाद if the price level goes up, what's going to happen if the price level goes up? मैंने देखा, देखें जी मेरी AD के नंबर्स गिर गए हैं। It has come down to 135। There is a movement along the curve because the price level changed। Anything that's on the y-axis will cause a movement। तो क्योंकि price level rise करता है, so what you would see is that C के numbers गिर गए because obviously if price level goes up, people will spend less। Probably investment के numbers भी गिरे ही होंगे। I don't know what this number is, you can figure it out with the same math, लेकिन इस बार C को replace कर दो I के साथ and then you can figure it out। But the point is, I की value will fall, G की value will fall, exports will fall because of the inflation, and imports is going to rise because if my country is experiencing inflation, I would start importing more because foreign goods is relatively cheaper, not absolute terms, but it's going to be relatively cheaper when you're going to compare it to your product, and so this falls down। I don't know why they have never given a question on 8 mark के अंदर movement along the curve। I would have given it long time ago कि जी ये बताएं कि if price levels are going up, Y में drop क्यों आ रहा है, AD में drop क्यों आ रहा है? So we talk about three effects। We talk about the income effect, we talk about the substitution effect, and we talk about the interest rate effect, right? So income effect is that because of the rising prices, people's purchasing power will fall, so they'll buy less। Because of our rising prices, foreigners will find our product to be more expensive, so they're going to substitute away from it, and we're going to substitute towards the import। And price level का interest rate से link है। देखो जी, पाकिस्तान के अंदर अभी हमने अपना interest rate को बढ़ाया 20%। Why did we do that? Well, IMF said your inflation is high, you gotta raise your interest rate। In other words, if I'm an investor and if prices are going up and I want to lend money, I'm going to be thinking about, okay, when I'm going to get my money back, will it be able to buy as much as goods and services as it could previously? I would love that। Why would I lend if I'm not getting return real terms में अच्छा, right? So what I'm going to see is, okay, Pakistan is going through massive inflation, 30, 35% inflation, then I want to get hedged against that inflation। So when I lend money, I want to get decent amount of money back also। ठीक है? If price level goes up, interest rates go up। ये बिल्कुल इनका एक direct relationship है, so make sure that you stick with this idea। All right, moving on। तो ये तुम्हारा aggregate demand हो जाता है। फिर I'm not going to do the shift with you, I'm assuming you already know the shift। ये देख लें जी, एग्रीगेट सप्लाई के अंदर दो किस्म के एग्रीगेट सप्लाई है। एग्रीगेट सप्लाई क्या होता है? इट्स द टोटल वैल्यू ऑफ goods and services produced in the country in a given period of time. How are these two supply curves different? Well, if you notice, हमने एएस के अंदर, माइक्रो के अंदर इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे ये देखा है कि जब प्राइस बढ़ती है तो प्रोड्यूसर वांट्स टू प्रोड्यूस मोर एंड सप्लाई मोर। ऑब्वियसली इलास्टिसिटी इज अ मैटर कि वो कितना सप्लाई बढ़ा सकता है और नहीं बढ़ा सकता। But the point is, if the price level goes up from PO to P1, on the aggregate level, what we see is that overall the supply has increased from YO to Y1. And then if the price level increases even more, बाय द वे ये प्राइस लेवल्स क्यों बढ़ रही होंगी? क्योंकि एडी के अंदर राइटवर्ड शिफ्ट आ रहा होगा, वो अपनी मर्जी से नहीं चेंज हो सकता, डिसइक्विलिब्रियम क्रिएट हो जाएगा। प्राइस लेवल इज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ एडीएएस। बट व्हाट वी वांट टू नोटिस इन द फर्स्ट केस इज कि देखो, if there is a consistent increase in the price level, there is a consistent increase in the aggregate supply, assuming that resources are plentiful and there is no constraint. There's an equal amount of constraint. Every time the price goes up, the supply increases by the same amount. However, what you observe in the next case is, in fact, what I'll do is I'll do my PO key marking a little lower. What you would observe इसके वही टू ब्लॉक का जब इंक्रीज आया प्राइस के अंदर, तो आउटपुट के अंदर इतना इंक्रीज आया। फिर इफ आई इंक्रीज इट बाय द सेम margins on the y-axis, what we start to observe is रियल आउटपुट के अंदर इक्वल इंक्रीज नहीं आ रहा। आउटपुट के अंदर कंस्ट्रेंट आ रहा है, आउटपुट के अंदर इंक्रीज सेम लेवल के साथ नहीं है, इट्स फॉलिंग। एंड व्हाट इज द रीजन बिहाइंड दैट? सो वी से द रीजन इज दैट रिसोर्सेज इवन इन द शॉर्ट रन के अंदर हमारी assumption होती है कि यू कैन नॉट चेंज द प्राइस ऑफ रिसोर्स, यू हैव टू यूटिलाइज द एग्जिस्टिंग रिसोर्स दैट यू हैव। तो अगर वर्कर 9 to 5 काम कर रहा है, तो उसको तुम और वर्कर्स नहीं लेकर आओगे, बट रादर व्हाट यू गोना डू इज यू गोना मेक दैट सेम वर्कर डू ओवर टाइम। And how much can you make them do overtime? You know, there's a limit to human capacity to work. तो आप कंटिन्यूसली उनसे ओवर टाइम नहीं करा सकते हो। उसी तरह से मशीन्स को आप ओवर एग्जॉस्ट नहीं कर सकते हो, ब्रेक डाउन होते हैं, वेयर एंड टेयर होता है। सो और रिसोर्सेज भी स्केर्स है, तो आप अक्वायरिंग के अंदर भी यू वुड हैव टफर टाइम इन डूइंग सो। So this Keynesian view in the short run is it's pretty decent, that because of this scarcity of resources, because of your inability to make your resources so elastic, आपके सप्लाई के अंदर कंस्ट्रेंट नजर आती है शॉर्ट रन की सिनेरियो के अंदर। आई गो बैक फॉर अ सेकंड कि शॉर्ट रन और लॉन्ग रन के अंदर क्या फर्क है। So this is our definition for this whole thing. These are there in your notes. You can take a look at it whenever you want. तो बात ये हो रही है कि शॉर्ट रन एग्रीगेट सप्लाई जो है हमारा, तो वो क्या कहते हैं? It is the outputs that will be supplied in a period of time when the prices of factors of production, the inputs and the resources, have not had time to adjust to the changing aggregate demand and the price level. You remember I said price level ऐसे नहीं बढ़ती, AD में जब change आएगा, so that will cause the price level to change. और फिर जब प्राइस लेवल चेंज होंगी, तो इन द शॉर्ट रन अभी प्राइस लेवल चेंज होने की वजह से आपकी रिसोर्सेज की एक्वायरिंग और ये नहीं हुई है। तो विद द गिवन circumstance, how would you work out? Okay, but in the long run we say ठीक है जी, प्राइस बढ़ने की वजह से we have made fully adjusted changes because of the AD, and then we can एक्ट अकॉर्डिंगली, और उसके हिसाब से हम अपनी सप्लाई को चेंज कर सकते हैं। तो वो लॉन्ग रन का सिचुएशन है। तो इन योर शॉर्ट रन आई वुड रिकमेंड यू प्लीज स्टिक विद द केन्जियन व्यू, बिकॉज मैक्रो के अंदर हम केन्जियन व्यू को ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस देते हैं एट एवरी पॉइंट देन the new classical. All right, moving on. उसमें शिफ्ट कैसे आ सकते हैं? शिफ्ट के रीजन होते हैं स्टफ लाइक रिसोर्स प्राइस का चेंज होना, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस, इंटरेस्ट रेट का चेंजेस होना। वो जो क्वेश्चन आया था 2021 के अंदर अबाउट शॉर्ट टर्म के अंदर व्हाट फैक्टर्स कैन कॉज अ शिफ्ट, तो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस का कम हो जाना, उससे कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन कम हो जाना, उससे एग्रीगेट सप्लाई का बढ़ जाना। तो इस तरीके से हमारा शॉर्ट टर्म एग्रीगेट सप्लाई का कर्व में शिफ्ट आ सकता है। यू गॉट टू टॉक अबाउट दैट। फिर इंटरेस्ट रेट का कम हो जाना, राइट, उसकी वजह से भी कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरोइंग जो है वो कम हो जाएगी और उससे एग्रीगेट सप्लाई में इंक्रीज आ जाएगा। यू अंडरस्टैंड स्टफ लाइक दैट। फैक्टर्स की प्रोडक्टिविटी में चेंजेस, क्वालिटी ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, दीज आर मोर फॉर द लॉन्ग रन। शॉर्ट रन में भी चला सकते हो इनको, लेकिन ये आई वुड एक्चुअली रिजर्व दीज वन फॉर लॉन्ग रन। शॉर्ट रन के अंदर आई वुड वर्क विद इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस, इंटरेस्ट रेट, सब्सिडी का मिल जाना, अलोंग दोज लाइन। ओके जी, ये बहुत ही ज्यादा जरूरी है। I'll give it a halo also. बहुत ही ज्यादा जरूरी है। क्यों जरूरी है? केन्जियन का व्यू है, एक्सटेंशन है हमारे पिछले एग्रीगेट सप्लाई कर्व की। इफ यू नोटिस देयर आर थ्री पार्ट्स टू इट, part number 1, part number 2, and part number 3. Part number 1, you could see that the supply is perfectly elastic without changes in the price level. You can increase the output, right? You can increase the output by increasing aggregate demand, and you can cause the real output to increase. If you go into the intermediate range, इसको कहते हैं intermediate range, सप्लाई बॉटलनेक भी कहते हैं साउथ वेल्स के कोर्स वर्क के अंदर। इंटरमीडिएट रेंज के अंदर क्या हो रहा है? इंटरमीडिएट रेंज के अंदर एडी के चेंज होने से आउटपुट पे भी इफेक्ट आ रहा है और प्राइसेस पे भी इफेक्ट आ रहा है। इफ यू नोटिस द प्राइस लेवल इज गोइंग अप एंड आउटपुट लेवल इज गोइंग अप टू। ये इंटरमीडिएट रेंज है। सप्लाई बॉटलनेक, सप्लाई बॉटलनेक का टर्म आगे जाके इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड में यूज होगा corrections के अंदर as a limitation, but just to mention it, supply bottleneck is that when you're getting more orders, people are demanding more stuff from you, you are starting to experience constraint in your production processes. ठीक है? It could be because of the limited number of capital that you might have. It could be, people's inability to increase output so much. एंड फाइनली जब आप रेंज 3 में जाते हो तो ये पोटेंशियल भी कहलाई जाती है, ये फुल एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी कहलाई जाती है। पोटेंशियल, लेट मी कॉल इट पोटेंशियल। ऑलराइट, मूविंग ऑन। तो इसमें एडी के अंदर इंक्रीज आएगा तो यू वुड नोटिस नथिंग हैपेंस टू द आउटपुट लेवल एंड द प्राइस लेवल गोज अप। बहुत ही ज्यादा जरूरी है ये LRAS का डिस्कशन। यूजली वो वाले क्वेश्चंस जहाँ इवैल्यूएशन का यूजेज हो। मूविंग ऑन, आई एम गोना ये LRAS के शिफ्ट के कुछ रीजंस देख लो। आई वुड लाइक यू टू फोकस ऑन दीज टू मेनली। इनफैक्ट LRAS का जो शिफ्ट होता है ना, if you were to make a shift, this is how you would make a shift in the LRAS. It's gonna go like this and then it's gonna go like that, right? तो पोटेंशियल जो है वो इंक्रीज हो जाएगा। पहले आप इतना ही जीडीपी प्रोड्यूस कर सकते थे, अब आप थोड़ी सी उससे ज्यादा जीडीपी प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हो। So it's gonna be, sort of like a shift like that. It will have the same elastic region in the beginning, then supply bottleneck, and then potential. LRAS का shifting to the right is pretty much the same thing as your PPC shifting to the right. There's no difference. And the same reasons, अगर तुम देखो on the right, मैंने जो reasons को identify किया है, ये reasons almost PPC shifting के reasons है। ठीक है? So you work on that और फिर ADAS और ये आ जाता है। So let me go into the past papers for it. Quite a lot of questions that I've already dealt with you guys, but let's go over these for a moment. So let's take a look at the first question. What's going on in the first question? They've given you a table. Foreign sales recognized AD, C, I, G, X. What is missing? M is missing. AD is equals to CIG plus X minus M, right? And I'm going to solve probably M's because नीचे trade में क्या हो रहा है? Trade की बात हो रही है. Just to mention, export minus import, I think I might have forgotten. I should have done that the same way जैसे मैंने budget की बात की थी, तो I should have talked about that also. कि जी trade surplus क्या होता है कि जब export ज़्यादा है और import कम है. More injections, less withdrawal. Economy is going to grow. That's a positive thing in terms of money, right? So इसको मैं surplus कहता हूँ. Trade deficit क्या है? Export कम है, import ज़्यादा है. So there's more withdrawal from the system than injection. That is a deficit. Got it? तो ये इस तरह से है. So you're going to work out the numbers probably when you're going to do that. The सारे numbers आ जाएंगे तुम्हारे पास CIGX minus M AD करके. I'll do the first one. So what you're doing is 262 is equals to 251 plus 64 minus M. And then you solve for M, and whatever number you're going to get, impose आएगा और probably negative के अंदर आएगा. Let me do it. Okay. So it's 251 plus 64. And then I will subtract this whole thing from 262. I get minus 53 for import. Export is 64, import is 53. So what I see is that there is a surplus taking place of whatever the difference is, 11 ka surplus aa raha hai. Right? So I think its answer is B, 158 ka trade surplus, and you would do the same math. I've told you how to deal with it. Okay, G. Let's take a look at this. Easy questions. You can't miss out on these. Honestly, these are good questions to deal with. हो क्या रहा है? ADAS का दिया हुआ है. काफी हद तक तो long run, I would say it is, because लिखा नहीं है कहीं पे भी, but I know कि ये long run है because of so elastic किया. Normal short run aggregate supply के अंदर इस तरह का होता है, इतना ज्यादा वो perfectly elastic range नहीं होती है उसमें. Okay, G. So what's going to happen? What would be the effect of a decrease in net export? Decrease in net exports. Net exports means X minus M करके net effect क्या है? There is a decrease taking place, right? So if there is a decrease, you would assume that the entire AD is going to go down. It's going to shift. It's going to shift to the left like this, right? And they're going to ask you, what's happening to aggregate supply? Has it shifted? No, it hasn't shifted. There's a movement along the curve, but it has not shifted. ये नहीं हो सकता. It's unchanged. ये हो सकता है. What happened to the price level compared to A to B? Price level remains unchanged. Honestly, answer इधर ही निकल आएगा. But what happened to the real GDP? I can see a significant drop. And so that's how you're going to be solving these questions. ADAS के तुमको reasons, I can't emphasize more, ADAS के reasons तुमको बहुत अच्छे से आने चाहिए. They're very important, and mainly for the reason कि जी इस तरह के MCQs के अंदर you should be able to deal with them more appropriately. which of these factors would definitely cause a rise in the general price level, right? You want the price level to go up? Well, जब तुम्हारा ADAS होता है, so if AD shifts to the right, what do you see? Well, AD shifts to the right, you experience real output to increase. You see employment is rising because more resource utilization, and the price levels are going up. So AD या तो बढ़ जाए या SRAS लेफ्ट पे चला जाए, but real output उसमें गिर जाएगा, but the price level will still go up. So you're looking at two reasons that would definitely cause the general price level to rise. When they use the word commodity, I'm thinking raw material. Okay. So if raw material prices go up, I think that would be fair to say that along this line तुम्हारा आंसर होना चाहिए and SRAS के अंदर shift आना चाहिए. So clearly फिर employment में drop आएगा, decrease, because output increases, employment increases. Output decreases, employment decreases. That's all, right? Uh, reasons, simple shift reasons. Yeah, one of those जो हमने interest rate की बात की थी, कहते हैं how is this going to have an impact? If the price level rises, right? If the price level goes up, what's going to happen? Well, I told you just a moment ago. If price level rises, what happens to interest rate? Well, they move in the same direction. Okay? So जो one के अंदर है, you would experience this to take place. If price levels are going up, what happens to the real value, purchasing power of the money that you saved? It falls. Probably answer इधर ही हमारा काफी हद तक निकल आया है. And lastly, rising interest rate and falling savings value will lead to lower consumption. And so see, right? So this is how you're going to deal with these. I think बाकी ये workbooks drive के अंदर है. You can take a look at those. Yeah, pretty much straightforward. All right, I would like to talk about this. For question number 30, if you take a look at question number 30, what do we see? From the final position of equilibrium shown, there is an increase in government expenditure on goods and services and simultaneously a reduction in the overall efficiency. So हो क्या रहा है? Increase in government expenditure, AD goes up. Fall in efficiency, aggregate supply goes down. What are we looking at? AD shifts to the right, AS shifts to the left. अब हमने micro में पढ़ा था that whenever AD and AS both are shifting, yeah, demand and supply both curves are shifting, there's always one uncertain factor. Price, yeah, real output mein, there's always going to be one uncertain factor. If AD shifts to the right and AS shifts to the left, let me make a very large shift to the left, AS के अंदर. What is the result? Well, the result is price level from here to here has risen up and output has fallen down. Fair enough. However, if this shift was not so much, it was just little, price level has gone up, but real output has increased in this case, right? Similarly, if it's an equal size shift, what do we see? Well, price level has gone up, real output is unchanged. So my final conclusion is prices are definitely rising, but output is uncertain. ये हमारा माइक्रो में भी ये सवाल आ सकता है और ये क्वेश्चन मैक्रो में भी बन सकता है जहां ADAS आ जाए ये सवाल बिल्कुल बनते हैं. ठीक हो गया. एंड दैट्स बाकी तुम खुद अपने एंड से कर सकते हो. प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू लुक एट दोस रीजंस मोर क्लोजली. ओके. Moving on to the essays. Again, most of these essays I've dealt with in the final play. इसमें कोई खास complications बनती नहीं है, ना आती है. Uh, Now, what I want to do is I want to change the question more towards how they're going to do it this year. So let's deal with our essay. Okay. Um, Let me see if sample paper के अंदर this year they've given a paper similar to this. तो मैं वहीं से उठा लूँ. Yeah, नहीं है. We'll have to make up a question. Explain how rise in the rate of interest might cause a shift in aggregate demand curve. And the second part could be, and consider whether that's a good question. Explain how rise in the rate of interest might cause a shift in the aggregate demand curve, and consider whether it will always cause the price levels to rise. ठीक है? And consider whether it will, or rise in interest rate, it will always cause the price level to fall, not rise, because rising interest rate. Okay, so this is my 8 marker. How do I solve this question? Well, first thing I need to know is what would be the breakdown of this question? The breakdown is AO1, AO2. AO1 and AO2 is going to be 6 marks, and AO3 is going to be 2 marks. Okay, what are these things? Knowledge and understanding, analysis collectively is 6 marks, and evaluation is 3 marks. ये जो है ना, and consider whether it will always cause the price level to fall. That's your 2 marker. But उससे पहले जो पूरी आप application दिखा रहे हो इसकी और knowledge and understanding दिखा रहे हो, that is your 6 marker. How would I go about this question? All right. First thing, knowledge and understanding. Let me clarify a few terminologies here. Aggregate demand curve. I've been checking some scripts of the examiners just to see exactly how they're going to be checking, and while marking the script, we come across good answers, and good answers usually have a very good flow to it and reasonable amount of content in it. What I mean in this question, I would like to see is that you define aggregate demand and aggregate demand curve. They're two different things, by the way. They both have different definitions altogether. Aggregate demand curve is the total value of goods and services produced in the country in a given period of time. Fair enough. AD equals to CIGX minus M. But an aggregate demand curve shows the relationship between price and real output. It's a curve. And this curve is responsible to show us the relationship between price and real output. If they're using the word uh, economy's aggregate demand curve, that's what aggregate demand curve is. I would like you to have a very standard, जब भी तुम aggregate demand और aggregate demand curve के बारे में लिखते हो, थोड़ा सा you define AD, you give a brief on the components C plus I plus G plus X minus M. And what does this stand for? Household consumption, business investments, government spending, and exports. And you subtract imports because they're not local domestic goods. Fair enough. So that's how you go about this. फिर उसके बाद you talk about the analysis. Analysis is a rise in the rate of interest might cause a shift in economy's aggregate demand curve. So let me show you. How is that going to happen? Well, if interest rate has gone up, the cost of borrowing has gone up. That would cause the borrowing to fall down by the consumers and the businesses, and that would cause aggregate demand numbers to fall down. Okay. And when it falls down, what happens to the price level? Well, generally, I can do an ADAS curve and I can show if AD falls down, there's no mark for an aggregate demand curve because they haven't asked for it. But when they say stuff like shift and curve, I feel that it's eminent that you have to draw them, right? But the point is, price level is going down. Now, evaluation may consider whether it will always cause the price level to fall. Will the price levels always fall? Well, not really. Under what circumstances will it not? Try to make up stuff. Well, maybe interest rates are going up, जिसकी वजह से AD में drop आ रहा है. But what if rising interest rate is also causing aggregate supply to fall down? How? Businesses borrow करके production करती हैं. जब interest rate ऊपर जाएगा, तो businesses की cost of production ऊपर जाएगी, जिसकी वजह से they'll produce less. And aggregate supply will shift to the left. And maybe if it shifts reasonably well, if you notice your new aggregate supply in my diagram here, AD में fall आया, AS वापस पीछे चला गया, prices are not falling, prices are stable with a much lower output levels. But the thing is, I'm considering it, whether it will always fall or not. उसी तरह से, I can even go for this scenario. What if the LRAS is this one? In the long run, what's going to happen? Well, in the long run, let's suppose if we are over here, aggregate demand के terms में, and if interest rate goes up and AD falls down, well, price level remains the same. ये भी एक circumstances. So दो mark के लिए, I can give out any circumstances, honestly, and that would be good enough. You understand it? So this is what the consideration wala part is, and then in my conclusion, I would say that a rise in interest rate may not always cause the price levels to fall. It depends on different scenarios. In the short run, it might, but in the long run, if it's on the perfectly elastic side, then it's not gonna cause the price levels to fall. So along those lines, I'm gonna write up for this. And this is what your consider part really means. All right. So I'm gonna stop here. Google Drive के अंदर there are some essays that I've done. Please take a look at those. Uh, the conclusion pattern. All right, let me go over the conclusion pattern. Evaluation एक चीज है और conclusion एक चीज है. Finally, in this one, your conclusion statement. ये जो मैं यहाँ पे कर रहा हूँ ना कि whether it will always fall or not. Uh, that is my certain analysis with an evaluation that maybe in the long run, when you have perfectly elastic side, maybe it's not going to fall, it's going to remain the same. The conclusion is that no, it will not always cause the price level to fall, because it depends on things. So that's my conclusion, my end, last 2 cents on this entire thing, that no, it's not going to always fall. It depends on different circumstances. Okay? So that would be your conclusion, that in the end, whether you agree with the statement, like here, consider whether it will always cause the price level to fall down. Nope, it's not gonna always. In fact, majority तुम्हारा जो questions होंगे उसके अंदर, you would say no, it's not gonna fall down. Uh, uh, because in this one it's only 2 marks. You can bring in the short run, long run situation here. Okay. In the short run, you could suggest कि हाँ जी जब AD गिरेगा, because look at this AS curve of mine. It's more of a short run curve. तो उसके shift को दिखा के तुम बोल सकते हो that in the short run that yes, it can cause price levels to fall down if there are no other aggregate supply factors which is causing the AS to fall. But your evaluation must focus on the idea कि आप बात कर रहे हैं कि प्राइस लेवल गिरेगी या नहीं गिरेगी. Don't go beyond the scheme and start talking about some other stuff. Focus is price level, will it fall or not? फिर उसके अंदर तुम different circumstances को लेकर आ जाओ and just say it. And that is what you're going to be focusing on. 8 points, explained one. That's good enough. You could have talked about this one. जो मैंने किया कि sometimes it's quite possible that other factors might not cause the prices to fall down because aggregate supply is shifting to the left. Or you can talk about this one, that in LRAS under perfectly elastic range is not going to fall. That both are absolutely perfectly fine. दोनों को लिखने जाओगे तो बहुत time लग जाएगा. Don't spend so much time. It's just 2 marks, right? So don't end up spending too much time in this. I hope that clarifies.